Good afternoon, children. Welcome back to our online classes. In the last class, we did our chapter number 4 from the supplementary reader. And so naturally, we are taking up the next lesson, Footprints Without Feet. That's the name of the chapter. You know, that's the name of the book also. The supplementary book is known as Footprints Without Feet. That chapter is here. And we are going to learn that chapter from today. Okay. This is about a scientist. A scientist named Griffin. Griffin. This chapter is an extract from a novel, The Invisible Man. You understood what I am saying? जो चैप्टर हमारे को दे रखा है एक नोवेल की एक पार्ट है. That novel is a science fiction novel. The name of the novel is The Invisible Man, which was published in 1897. And you know, H.G. Wells, the author, the writer. H.G. means Herbert George Wells. H-E-R-B-E-R-T. Herbert George. G-E-O-R-G-E. George Wells. W-E-L-L-S. Is a very famous science fiction writer. Is very famous for his science fictions. So he wrote many science fiction novels, and the most famous is The Time Machine. The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, and The Invisible Man. The Invisible, you know. Invisible माने आदमी गायब हो जाता है. Can think a human body becoming invisible, and you can enter anywhere without being seen. And what a surprise it will be when you do things and others cannot see you. That is about this lesson. This lesson talks about a scientist named Griffin. Griffin. G-R-I-F-F-I-N. Griffin becomes invisible by swallowing a kind of drug, medicine. He's a scientist. He invented that medicine. After inventing the medicine, he tried it on himself. Actually, दवाई वाला जो बनाता है ना, वो एनिमल्स पर टेस्ट करने के बाद देन ह्यूमन्स पर आता है. आपको पता है कोरोना वायरस की भी दवाई, the medicine is just under preparation. It needs a lot of tests to prove its worth. So here this fellow, he invented the drug. He discovered the drug. Then after that, drug means medicine. Then he tried on himself. And his body became invisible. Invisible आप कैसे जानते हो? Invisible का मतलब body invisible है. If you try to cover it with the clothes, then it does not become transparent. Then it is visibly seen. जितनी पार्ट आपने कपड़े से ढके है, उतनी पार्ट दिखाई देगा. कपड़ा उतारते ही you become transparent. आपके शरीर से लाइट आर पार हो जाएगा. आपको आधा दिखाना है, आधा ढक लो. सिर छोड़ दो, सिर दिखेगा नहीं, बाकी बॉडी दिख जाएगा. कवर योर गर्दन से नीचे वाली पार्ट कंप्लीटली आप करो. शू ना पहनो तो पैर नहीं दिखेगा. यू कैन नॉट द टोस एंड द हील्स वोंट बी विजिबल. आप ग्लव्स नहीं डालोगे तो आपकी हथेली नहीं दिखेंगी, है ना. So this way, isn't it funny? कोशिश करना है, फिर तो ये दवाई खाना पड़ेगा। दवाई किसके पास है? ग्रिफिन के पास। सो दिस इज अ वेरी वंडरफुल स्टोरी। सो इट्स वेरी फनी, है ना। आप सॉलिड होते हुए भी आपको कोई देख नहीं पा रहे, एंड यू कैन एंटर एनीवेयर एंड यू कैन डू एनीथिंग यू लाइक, बट वन थिंग, यू हैव टू रिमेन नेकेड, कंप्लीटली नेकेड। कपड़ा तो पहनना ही नहीं। सर्दी, गर्मी, हवा, बारिश, हर बार आपको दिक्कत आएगी। कपड़ा पहनोगे नहीं, कपड़ा पहनोगे तो उतना ही पार्ट दिखाई देगा। सो इट्स वेरी डेंजरस, है ना। सो लेट्स सी व्हाट दिस मैन इज डूइंग, हाउ दिस मैन is treated by the public. So this is about Griffin, Footprints Without Feet. I told you it is written by Herbert George Wells. He was born on 21 September 1866 in London, and at the age of 79 he expired. That was on 13 August 1946. I told you his best known stories are science fiction novels are The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man. Extract जो हमारे पास है, Footprints Without Feet, that is an extract from The Invisible Man, which was published in 1897. Okay, and The Invisible Man deals with the life and death of a scientist called Griffin. उनका जन्म से लेकर उनका जो लाइफ पूरा, देन इसकी मौत तक उसमें बताता है। लेकिन हमारी स्टोरी में इसका बीच का एक पार्ट, थोड़ा सा इसको क्या क्या परेशानी आया उसके बारे में थोड़ा बताते हैं, बट इट्स वेरी 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 इंटरेस्टिंग। ओके, सो यू गोट ऑल द डिटेल्स। इट इज रिटन बाय हर्बर्ट जॉर्ज वेल्स। मैं और एक बार ये बात बता रही थी, whenever you get some money, whenever you want some gift, better you ask for books, short stories, novels, whatever you can. Now I think you can understand English properly well. Better you read some novels, some story books. So birthday में पैसा ऐश करके उड़ाने की बजाय you ask your friends, your relatives, your parents to get you some books. Books का नाम हर एक चैप्टर के पीछे देखो, सप्लीमेंट्री रीडर के हर एक लेसन के पीछे आप देखो, there are a number of stories and with its authors written there. Reference reading के लिए please I request you to get some books. फिर अपनी अपनी जो लाइब्रेरी बनाइए, दोस्तों को उधार दीजिए, उनके पास जो है आप लीजिए, and you can do well and then you can get the, हाँ, ये कहानी का मज़ा उठा सकता है। You can enjoy the stories yourself. So today I am going to read the story for you. Tomorrow onwards we are going to explain. So let us start. What one? Footprints Without Feet, written by his Herbert George Wells, H.G. Wells. Look into the text. Can a man become invisible? This is the story of a scientist who discovers how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? The two boys started in surprise at the fresh muddy imprints of a pair of bare feet. What was a barefooted man doing on the steps of a house in the middle of London? And where was the man? As they gazed, A remarkable sight met their eyes. A fresh footmark appeared from nowhere. Further footprints followed, one after another, descending the steps and progressing down the street. The boys followed, fascinated, until the muddy impressions became fainter and fainter and at last disappeared altogether. The explanation of the mystery was really simple enough. The bewildered boys had been following a scientist who had just discovered how to make the human body transparent. Griffin, the scientist, had carried out experiment after experiment to prove that the human body could become invisible. Finally, he swallowed certain rare drugs, and his body became as transparent as a sheet of glass, though it also remained as solid as glass. Brilliant scientist though he was, Griffin was rather a lawless person. His landlord disliked him and tried to eject him. In revenge, Griffin set fire to the house. To get away without being seen, he had to remove his clothes. Thus it was that he became a homeless wanderer, without clothes, without money, and quite invisible, until he happened to step in some mud and left footprints as he walked. He escaped easily enough from the boys who followed his footprints in London. But his adventures were by no means over. He had chosen a bad time of the year to wander about London without clothes. It was midwinter. The air was bitterly cold, and he could not do without clothes. Instead of walking about the streets, he decided to slip into a big London store for warmth. Closing time arrived, and as soon as the doors were shut, Griffin was able to give himself the pleasure of clothing and feeding himself without regard to expense. He broke open boxes and wrappers and fitted himself out with warm clothes. Soon, with shoes, an overcoat, and a white-brimmed hat, he became a fully dressed and visible person. In the kitchen of the restaurant, he found cold meat and coffee, and he followed up the meal with the sweets and wine taken from the grocery store. Finally, he settled down to sleep on a pile of quills. If only Griffin had managed to wake up in good time, all might have been well. As it was, he did not wake up until the assistants were already arriving next morning. When he saw a couple of them approaching, he panicked and began to run. They naturally gave chase. In the end, he was able to escape only by quickly taking off his newly found clothes. So once more he found himself invisible but naked in the chill January air. This time he decided to try the stock of a theatrical company in the hope of finding not only clothes but also something that would hide the empty space above his shoulders. Shivering with the cold, he hurried to Drury Lane, the center of the theatre world. He soon found a suitable shop. He made his way invisible upstairs and came out a little later wearing bandages round his forehead, dark glasses, false nose, big bushy side whiskers, and a large hat. To escape without being seen, he carelessly attacked the shopkeeper from behind, after which he robbed him of all the money he could find. Eager to get away from crowded London, he took a train to the village of Epping, where he booked 2 rooms at the local inn. The arrival of a stranger at an inn in winter was in any case an unusual event. A stranger of such uncommon appearance set all tongues wagging. Mrs. Hall, the landlord's wife, made every effort to be friendly. But Griffin had no desire to talk, and told her, "My reason for coming to Epping is a desire for solitude. I do not wish to be disturbed in my work. Besides, an accident has affected my face." Satisfied that her guest was an eccentric scientist, and in view of that, the fact that he had paid her in advance, Mrs. Hall was prepared to excuse his strange habits and irritable temper. But the stolen money did not last long, and presently Griffin had to admit that he had no more ready cash. He pretended, however, that he was expecting a check to arrive at any moment. Shortly afterwards, a curious episode occurred. Very early in the morning, a clergyman and his wife were awakened by noises in the study. Creeping downstairs, they heard the chink of money being taken from the clergyman's desk. Without making any noise, and with a poker grasped firmly in his hand, the clergyman flung open the door. "Surrender!" Then, to his amazement, he realized that the room appeared to be empty. He and his wife looked under the desk, and behind the curtains, and even up the chimney. There wasn't a sign of anybody. Yet the desk had been opened, and the housekeeping money was missing. Extraordinary affair, the clergyman kept saying for the rest of the day. But it was not as extraordinary as the behavior of Mrs. Hall's furniture a little later that morning. The landlord and his wife were up very early and were surprised to see the scientist's door wide open. Usually it was shut and locked, and he was furious if anyone entered his room. The opportunity seemed too good to be missed. They peeped around the door, saw nobody, and decided to investigate. The bedclothes were cold, showing that the scientist must have been up for some time. And stranger still, the clothes and bandages that he always wore were lying about the room. All of a sudden, Mrs. Hall heard a sniff close to her ear. A moment later, the hat on the bedpost leapt up and dashed itself into her face. Then the bedroom chair became alive. Springing into the air, it charged straight at her, legs foremost. As she and her husband turned away in terror, the extraordinary chair pushed them both out of the room and then appeared to slam and lock the door after them. Mrs. Hall almost fell down the stairs in hysterics. She was convinced that the room was haunted by spirits, and that the stranger had somehow caused these to enter into her furniture. "My poor mother used to sit in that chair," she moaned. "To think it should rise up against me now." The feeling among the neighbors was that the trouble was caused by witchcraft. But witchcraft or not, when news of the burglary at the clergyman's home became known, the strange scientist was strongly suspected of having had a hand in it. Suspicion grew even stronger when he suddenly produced some ready cash, though he had admitted not long before that he had no money. The village constable was secretly sent for. Instead of waiting for the constable, Mrs. Hall went to the scientist, who had somehow mysteriously appeared from his empty bedroom. "I want to know what you have been doing to my chair upstairs," she demanded. "And I want to know how it is you came out of an empty room and how you entered a locked room." The scientist was always quick-tempered, and now he became furious. "You don't understand who or what I am," he shouted. "Very well, I'll show you." Suddenly he threw off bandages, whiskers, spectacles, and even nose. It took him only a minute to do this. The horrified people in the bar found themselves staring at a headless man. Mr. Jaffers, the constable, now arrived and was quite surprised to find that he had to arrest a man without a head. But Jaffers was not easily prevented from doing his duty. If a magistrate's warrant ordered a person's arrest, then that person had to be arrested with or without his head. There followed a remarkable scene as the policeman tried to get hold of a man who was becoming more and more invisible as he threw off one garment after another. Finally, a shirt flew into the air, and the constable found himself struggling with someone he could not see at all. Some people tried to help him, but found themselves hit by blows that seemed to come from nowhere. In the end, Jaffers was knocked unconscious as he made a last attempt to hold on to the unseen scientist. There were nervous, excited cries of "Hold him!" But this was easier said than done. Griffin had shaken himself free, and no one knew where to lay hands on him. H.G. Wells. Got it? Okay. Read it. It's a very interesting story. I told you this is the work of a scientist, an invisible scientist. Instead of using his discovery for the purpose of good things, he misused his discovery for his own personal benefit. That's why at the very beginning it's given, can a man become invisible? Maybe science may develop into that much that we can say that it's possible. This is the story of a scientist who discovers how to make himself invisible. Does he use or misuse his discovery? That's a problem here. Whether Griffin uses it properly, he misuses it. Okay? We'll discuss it tomorrow onwards. Thank you and have a nice day. Take care. Bye.